So okay, I guess for me, what I've seen in a lot of posts is we've had a back and forth a few times on post, maybe a couple times on posts rather, and a lot of times I've seen like your takes on posts and they kind of I felt like we probably had some fundamental disagreements. So I figure we can kind of discuss a little bit and suss some of those things out. I guess the conversation I've been having the most frequently lately has just been on the topic of All Lives Matter versus Black Lives Matter.
I mean, that is the current major topic of of politics. You know,
Absolutely.
the whole movement right now.
Yeah. So what would you say? And hold on before we get completely into the conversation, there was a point you said where if you felt that what was the word you used? You said if
Good faith.
yeah, if I was not arguing in good faith that you were out. Like, can you explain to me what that means to you?
A lot of people, when they argue, they try to argue for gotchas rather than actually trying to argue some sort of uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Just basically just trying to argue the argument itself. They're trying to argue to attack.
Ah, okay, sure, yeah. I won't. That's not my stance. Yeah, good. Then we don't have to worry about that.
Like, I like Socratic arguments.
Okay, I'm about that as well. I think catechization is probably the best, like the most effective way of helping people come to information. I tend to do it very frequently, so I totally agree with that. So with that being said, okay, so your stance on the Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter movement. What's your
I
yeah.
I don't consider it a Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter situation. I'm not going to say All Lives Matter to someone who says Black Lives Matter.
Okay.
I consider it a Marxism versus individualism matter. And so, Black Lives Matter, All Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, whatever. What my concern with the the Black Lives Matter movement is the organization itself. I do not like the Black Lives Matter organization. I think they're inherently a Marxist organization. Now, a lot of people will say that Black Lives Matter is not an organization. It's like Antifa. Um, I don't know what word I'm looking for, but it's disparate groups, and that's not actually true. It is an organization. It has leaders, it has chapters, it has organizers, it has founders, it has a website, it has goals that it puts on that website, and my core beliefs are anathema to the goals of Black Lives Matter. It's got nothing to do with race to me. It has to do with Marxism.
Okay, so I think well, one of the issues with that philosophy or that point of view is that I do believe it's pretty safe to say at this point that the movement has significantly outgrown any individual or organization. 95% of people using the hashtag Black Lives Matter literally have no idea of any localized
You are absolutely
organization,
correct.
and 95% of them literally have no idea of who any leader would be and are acting independently. So I think the idea of kind of focusing on a specific origin leads you to a fallacy, right? Like the genetics fallacy almost, where
I don't believe it does.
well,
Because
let me explain.
okay,
So
okay.
basically, the genetics fallacy is where you try to disprove the validity of something by citing its origin as something that is nefarious or like invalid, right? And in this specific case, that genetic fallacy would be because the founder of the Black Lives Matter has, some of these ridiculous views. Therefore, the Black Lives Matter as a movement, regardless of its complete distinction from the founder and its independence of the founder's influence or motivation, is somehow invalid, and that just seems like that by definition that would be textbook genetic fallacy.
I I understand your what you mean by genetic fallacy. I don't believe it applies in this case because what you're seeing is the movement, even if it has grown beyond the original Black Lives Matter organization, which is still the organization which is getting all the funding whenever these Black Lives Matter movements happen. When a company gives money to Black Lives Matter, they're giving it to that organization. But even though it has moved beyond that, the ideals of Black Lives Matter, beyond race, of course, I'm not talking about race, is still that original core Marxist ideals. Now we
No.
have them
What? No.
tearing down statues to people who have nothing to do with racism.
Okay, first off, again, I'm trying to understand how, if 95% of people, as you already agreed, don't even know who the founders are or what the core ideals of the founders were of this movement, then how could you possibly say that the people that are practicing now still have ties to this Marxist ideology?
I'm not saying that they have ties. I'm saying that what they're doing is still moving forward that agenda.
So, what 90% of what they're doing is protesting, and you feel like protesting is moving forward that agenda?
Vandalizing statues.
Okay, so first off, let's be clear here. Black Lives Matter has existed for the better part of a decade, and
I believe it was founded in 2013.
Okay,
I'm not sure on the exact date.
Great, the better part of a decade, and despite it being present for the better part of a decade, the vast majority, and I don't feel like I would be exaggerating or be generous at all to say that over 95% of the protests have been peaceful. So then to try,
you're probably right.
Okay, so then to try to point or paint the Black Lives Matter organization as something, or trying to highlight specifically something that you might feel is nefarious, while ignoring the other 95% of what Black Lives Matter is, wouldn't that seem a little bit ridiculous?
Well, you just said the Black Lives Matter organization. Now,
No.
you're talking about 95% of people who may not even know that the organization exists.
Okay, so yeah, that's where we're having a problem. So let's just get this out of
Yeah.
the way, okay, really quickly, because I thought I mentioned that in the
Soviets
beginning.
had a term for what you're talking about.
What's that?
It's a derogatory term.
Okay.
It's called useful idiot.
Okay, so here, I feel like so that we don't continue getting stuck with this. I think the problem here is that what you're doing is you're focusing on the origin again, right? Because this is that genetic fallacy again thing.
No,
because
it's not the
let me
origin.
explain why. Because if the movement has gone beyond and outside of the influence of that individual organization, then to try,
I don't believe it has.
Okay, so then explain to me, so how could you say that it's not beyond the influence of that organization if you yourself admitted that 95% of people involved in the protest, 95% of the people using the slogan, creating the hashtag, that are part of the actual movement, which is pretty grassroots, if 95% of those people have literally no idea about any of the Marxist ideology from its founder, have literally no idea who the founder is, literally no funding or any other sphere of influence from the founder, then how could you not say that it has outgrown the founder? How could you not say that it's not outgrown its foundation?
Because what they're doing still furthers that Black Lives Matter agenda.
No.
The organization.
That's not the question. That's not the question. The question is not whether.
Then I'm not quite understanding what you're asking me.
I know. I'm going to rephrase it for you. So the idea is, you're basically saying that the foundation has an influence on the individuals protesting it, right? I'm sorry. The foundation has an influence, and the foundation and the founders have an influence on the people who are practicing the Black Lives Matter movement. But if
I'm saying that the foundational organization has influenced people to fight for a cause that they may or may not agree with. And even if they disagree with that cause, what they are doing furthers it. Furthers that cause.
So again, if 95% of people have no idea who the founders are or any of their ideology, then it really doesn't make sense. And I feel like we're kind of getting circular here. So I'll just try to come up with an analogy, and maybe that'll help understand. Help us get further, right? So maybe an individual has the idea that he wants to encourage his child to go to college, right? And so his idea is, I want my kid to go to college, right? And so the kid is deciding, yeah, I'm gonna go to college. Like, this is like, the kid is deciding eventually, just by his own means, that he's going to do something that it's probably in his best interest to go to college. Now, maybe the dad wants the kid to go to college for, I don't know, some other reason. Maybe he wants the kid to go to college just because he feels like he'll get copious amounts of vagina in a college atmosphere, right?
Good bad.
Right. So it whatever. Like, that might be the dad's reasoning. It doesn't matter. if the end thing, if at the end the kid is completely unaware of the dad's reasoning for him wanting to go to college, and the kid is literally going to college with the goal and aim of furthering his career and bettering himself and educating himself, it doesn't matter what the dad's original intention were for why that kid went to college. At the end of the day, what matters is what the kid's motivations are, what he does with his motivations. That's what that's what matters. So like citing some, like, again, genetic fallacy of some nefarious leader or organizer who started the movement, who had these terrible ideas and plan that are like literally eschewed by like the vast majority of the followers, who are literally who are not influenced or even aware of what that person's ideology was, then it seems like, again, that's the genetic fallacy, and it has almost literally zero correlation to what's actually occurring today.
Like I said, I understand the point you're making. I do not agree with it, but my point is, because I don't agree with it, I will try to teach people about what the Black Lives Matter organization is actually going for.
But it's irrelevant.
I don't want these people to be supporting interests that they may not agree with.
Okay, so but what the quote unquote organization BLM has nothing to do with the protests of the people sharing the thing.
But the Black Lives Matter organization, I don't think people should be supporting.
Okay, so that's a totally different. Okay, so it sounds to me like your whole concept that I probably would agree with if they are indeed Marxists is that that founding organization, even though it has literally nothing to do with 95% of people who are protesting and using the tag and trying to further the cause of quote unquote Black Lives Matter, that has completely outgrown those people. That has completely outgrown these individuals, right? You're basically saying you just don't believe that these individuals should be supported. Okay, and I think if they're Marxists, as you say, which I haven't done a lot of research about the origin, because again I felt it was completely irrelevant, because as I said, 95% of people literally have no idea who these people are, literally have no idea like what their ideology is, literally are uninformed and uninfluenced by anything that has to do with those people. So I never felt a need to look into those things. Right, but I don't even see what the information. Okay, that's a whole. Okay, great. So then we agree, Black Lives Matter. Like the slogan is not a problem. You agree that the protests.
The organization I have a problem with, and using that slogan props up that organization.
Okay, that's so now issue. We have a problem. That's exactly where the issue comes. All right, so I feel like we've come full circle. I feel like we've been going around in this rabbit hole talking about the organization, and the whole time I've been trying to get you to focus on the organization.
Then. I don't think we're going to come to an agreement.
Hold on, let me write that down so I make sure that we understand. So you have a problem with the Black Lives Matter slogan because it furthers, or because it supports
it implicitly supports the organization Black Lives Matter.
You mean tacitly? But sure, is it tacitly support?
No, I mean implicitly.
Okay.
Because as you said, a lot of people who use that slogan don't know that they support that they are supporting, but it's being implied with that phrase.
Sure, we'll use the word implicit. I'm going to use it, whatever. It means the same thing. Supports the BLM organization. Okay, now, so that's why we originally went to the thing where I was mentioning specifically that, okay. I'm trying to make sure I can reason out why this is such an error. Okay. Let's get to the point of let's say you have a realist. Okay, perfect. So say there happens to be, I don't know, a Confederate general who happened to be a good man in several ways, right? And you decided that you think it would be unhealthy to mention several good things that this general did for his society and humanitarian efforts or whatever that general did. And you said, I don't think it's good to even mention these things specifically because in some way it'll support the cause of actual racist, Confederate people, racist Southerners. Do you understand why that would be ridiculous to try to say that something that is completely removed, like something that's completely removed? But it's not removed.
That's my point.
Then great. Now demonstrate to me the attachment. What is the attachment? Okay. Because we've already conceded that 95% of people literally don't know them, have no influence from them, have no idea what they support. and are acting of their own volition. So then what is that influence then? Explain it to me.
Because they are fighting the local politicians, the local governance, the companies to donate money and to give support to the Black Lives organization. So you have a company like
no, that's not true. In most cases, they're not even talking about specifically the organization. They're talking about. I've seen God knows how many posts where people are specifically
go to Black
mentioning.
Lives Matter, click donate.
Hold on. I've done no. So what you're doing now, that's called a selection bias. So what you're looking at specifically is look at the people who are donating to Black Lives Matter to prove that most people are recommending you donate to Black Lives Matter. If you control for specifically people that are donating to Black Lives Matter, that's what you're going to find. But what I was going to say was that specifically that that you'll find that in most cases people aren't advocating support any Black Lives Matter foundation. In most cases, they're saying support black businesses. They're saying support grassroots movements. I've always heard it mentioned in very, very general terms. Support grassroots movements that support the cause of Black Lives Matter, and so on and so forth. It's not. Again, 95% of people are literally unaware that there is a Black Lives Matter organization or foundation. So most of the time, it's literally a general call to support the cause, not having any ideology of what the organization is.
But what I'm saying is supporting that cause props up the Marxist organization. And this will just bring me back to that Soviet derogatory term, useful idiots. Even if you don't know what you're supporting, you have been convinced by propaganda to support a cause that you know nothing about. That's where the term useful idiot comes from.
So therein lies the problem. So you think that people are unknowingly supporting something that probably they don't necessarily understand.
Yes, exactly.
And you think it's legitimately propaganda?
I think the Black Lives Matter organization is propaganda.
Okay. I feel like I don't even know how to move forward from this because I feel
that's why I'm saying we should just move on to another topic. Because I don't think we're going to come to any sort of agreement here. Okay, but
let me. It's hard for me to just give up on this. I feel like maybe I need to write it out just to make sure, so I can understand where this it's really egregious, but it's just I don't know. I'm having a hard time helping you to understand it. The idea is. So if we've established that there is a distinction between the average intent of the person using the Black Lives Matter slogan and the organization that you find to be nefarious, if there is a distinction, then to create a correlation between these two because of a phrase or a terminology, which is, as I said, clearly outgrown that foundation or that organization, that is problematic. Now, if your whole thing is to undermine the Black Lives Matter movement, which you've already admitted has outgrown this foundation because this foundation might reap some of the tangential benefits of this, that seems a little bit ridiculous considering if you agree that the Black Lives Matter, what the average person is advocating for is something worthy, honorable, and beneficial. Do you disagree that the cause that the average person...
agree that it is tangential. Okay. I think this entire
by definition it is. That's not an argument.
Democrats elected. I believe this is an entire political movement based on propaganda about getting Democrats elected to give them more power.
Okay, so you don't believe that it has anything to do with people's outcry over the police brutality?
I believe that people have been convinced via propaganda that America is a racist country against black people. Okay, and I do not believe that is true.
Okay, so do you believe that there is disproportionate policing of blacks?
I believe there is disproportionate policing of some neighborhoods more than others. Yes, and sometimes those neighborhoods have high black populations.
Okay, could we find systemically, if we were to just look at the nation as a whole, would we find a disparity if we were to only control for race when it comes to police, to policing? Would we find a disparity if we only controlled for race?
If you are only controlling for race, then I will say you are committing selection bias.
No. What? No, 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 no. So selection bias is when you only control for a specific thing and then try to claim that that thing is the only
Okay.
thing. So that's
Here's my point.
literally not the same thing. So if I'm saying,
Here's my point. If you get into an altercation with a police officer, statistically, it is more likely as a white person for you to get shot than as a black person. However,
that's a different question altogether.
black people, however,
That's a
black
different question.
people tend to get into more police altercations with police officers.
Okay, so again, that kind of brings us back to the original question, because you just mentioned something that was completely extraneous. We can go there if you want eventually, but right now what we're talking about is there disproportionate policing if we were to control for race?
Disproportionate policing in what way?
In other words, are blacks policed more than whites? Just in general, like
you are asking me a specific question, and I can answer that with another question.
Hopefully, the question you're answering is probably on the same topic.
I mean, I try to stay away from race, but since you want to bring race into it, and you ask me if are black people policed more than white people?
Yes.
The answer to that is obviously a yes.
Okay.
However, I have a question to add on to that.
Sure.
Are black people represented in crimes more often than whites?
So here we go with the chicken before the egg situation.
Like I said, these are rhetorical questions.
They're not. It's not a rhetorical question. It's not a rhetorical question, because let me explain it to you. So this is a chicken before the egg situation. Let me give you an analogy. You have two people that on the first day of every week decide to commit a crime. Two different people that on the first day of every week decide to commit a crime. You decide, because you see high crime rates, you're going to look and examine, you're going to watch the people at random to determine, to just monitor their behavior to try to determine the crime. Now, you're going to watch the person number two, I don't know, 80% of the time, and you're going to monitor person number one 20% of the time. You're going to find a disparity in burglaries, right? But it's not because they're committing different levels of burglaries. It's because of the fact that you're looking for it amongst other people. You're looking for it in person number two. So because you're paying attention to number two very much more often, then you're going to catch his burglaries, even though they're not more prevalent than the other one. And this is borne out in the fact when we find out that whites and Hispanics make up 66% of all crack cocaine usage, but blacks make up 80% of the charges, arrests, and sentencing for crack cocaine usage. So if we were to look at the statistics and say blacks are representative more in crime here, that might be valid, but the fact is they're not higher representation of usage, not higher representation of distributing or selling, and they just so happen to be policed, charged, and convicted more. So yeah,
they are higher representation in areas that have higher crime. So an area that has higher crime will have more police officers, and hence will have more police action.
Okay, is it fair to say, again, I think you just ignored the entire thing I said about the blacks and the cocaine usage, right? Where if whites, we know statistically, whites and Hispanics...
Listen, a rich white guy in a penthouse is not going to get arrested for doing coke. A rich black guy in the penthouse is probably not going to get arrested for doing coke either.
Okay, so the point is, if white and Hispanic make up 66% of all crack cocaine usage, but then blacks make up 80% of all charges, arrests, and sentencing for crack cocaine usage, then the difference here is not that blacks are a higher representation of the crime being committed. It's just that they're a higher representation of policing.
I will accept that argument.
Okay, so but then where does it not apply?
I will say that race may not have anything to do with that difference, it may simply be geographics.
So I like how you would like to do that, but again, as I said before, if we control specifically for race, we find
then you're ignoring all the other issues.
Okay, what other issue would you say is confounding? Or compounding there?
Well, like I said, geography. Certain areas generally have higher crime.
But again, if the areas that have higher crime are the areas that happen to be minority, but the minority areas are policed more, then you don't have the information to determine that those areas necessarily have higher crime than their white counterparts. It's just that they are policed more than their white counterparts, and therefore more likely to be charged and sentenced more, and therefore we can't understand that there is actually a higher rate of crime there. However, I will agree
from that geographical region will be arrested just as much as the black
but
people.
That's okay, and that's exactly what I was disagreeing with, because we find that even whites, even amongst whites who are in the same poverty and income levels as very poor and poverty blacks, still are policed less, still less likely to be charged, still less likely to receive, that there's still going to be a disparity in the amount of sentencing, all of those things. So ultimately, even within those neighborhoods, geographical locations in which people are very impoverished, you still find that blacks are more likely to be policed, stopped, charged, and all of the above than whites, even though the whites are just as guilty in those cases. We've already recognized that statistically, if we control for poverty, that we find that poverty begets crime, and that there just no matter where there is crime, even in completely white neighborhoods where there is high levels of poverty, there is high levels of crimes. But we found that even within those high level crime areas that are predominantly white, that there is still less policing, still less charging, still a disparity. So the disparity can be controlled for by race.
Are those people shooting at cops though? That's what I'm talking about.
Wait, you just moved the goalpost so insanely far
here.
No,
it's talking about crime. I'm talking about crime.
Right.
Even if you're doing coke, if you're not committing other crimes, there's going to be less policing.
So, here's another statistic to go ahead and just take a dump on everything you just said right there. The vast majority
actually shows the opposite.
In the vast shows the opposite of what?
That except you are correct. In that generally black people receive about a 14 to 15% longer sentences for identical crimes to white people. I will agree with you on that.
Okay.
But what I have seen,
that's one of the reasons why we protest Black Lives Matter.
I have seen. What was that?
That's one of the reasons why we're protesting Black Lives Matter. That's part of the reason for the slogan Black Lives Matter, is specifically to address the fact that our lives clearly don't matter to some, especially in the criminal justice system, if we receive a 15%, which I think, by the way, that's not actually, the number is a lot higher than that, but whatever. If we receive a difference in sentencing for identical crimes, then that means that our lives apparently has less
a lot
value
of times those differences in sentencings have to do with previous crimes.
Legal
history.
Even if you control even if you control, we have the statistics here, even if you control for priors, and if you control for prior crime, we found that with literally identical prior records, with identical sentences, with identical priors in the same city, if we control for geographic location, we control for the crime, and we control for their prior criminal history, we still find a disparity between sentencing.
You do not once you start looking at like for instance police body cameras. And police body cameras have shown that certain groups of people tend to be more combative with police.
Wait, no. I'm sorry. That's
and
again that's a goalpost.
Police, you get longer sentences.
That's completely extraneous. I don't even know how to process what's happening here. This is like an insane pivot. You literally just went from a disparity in crimes to now you're talking about combativeness with police officers, which literally is that's one it's completely subjective.
That is part of crime.
So
and disparity in crime.
Okay, so how come then? Okay, so then no.
Together.
Great. So then, how come there is such a great disparity between the two before we even had body cams? Why was that disparity so present? If you remember, the Sentencing Reform Act was specifically created in 1968, before there were even body cams, specifically because of the disparity. So if that's the case, then I think it's pretty safe to say that body cams weren't the cause in the disparity in sentencing. And we've witnessed after the disparity, after the Sentencing Reform Act, that there was even a greater disparity that was caused that happened immediately following the Sentencing Reform Act, and again, body cameras weren't present. So then I feel like for you to recognize that there has been this disparity in sentencing for literally over 100 years, and then try to say no, but now the disparity is tied directly to police body cameras.
I'm not saying that the body cameras are leading to longer sentencing. I'm saying the body cameras are exposing why they get longer sentencing, because people can see now. It used to be just, why are these people getting longer sentences? And then you see the body cam and say, oh, that's why. But going to what you said about going back through history, this country was racist in the past. I don't think it's racist anymore.
So you don't
I don't
feel
think it's been racist for a long time.
So okay, maybe racist is a wrong word there. Oh no, I can't move forward yet. I can't move to that. We can get to that
I think
in a second.
America
Hold on.
is the least racist multi-ethnic country in the world.
Okay, we can get to that later. Hold on. We gotta stick with the original point here. So you are admitting that there was a disparity in sentencing, and what was the cause for the disparity in sentencing before police body cams? Just racism?
It depends on how far back you go.
From 1968 until the first body cams within in the late 90s.
I would say after around the 90s, I'd say it wasn't racism anymore.
So then what was...
I'd say it was combativeness and crime.
Okay, so was there combativeness before the body cams?
Sure there was. Body cams only started, what, like 10 years ago?
Okay, so then if there was combativeness before the body cams, then... But you're saying that had nothing to do with the disparate policing at that point?
I'm not saying it had nothing to do. I'm saying it's not a major part.
Okay, so this is where we have a problem here, because the combativeness with the police officers isn't reflected in any way, shape, or form in the charges. You see, again, if we control, because if you're combative with a police officer and you fight a police officer, you understand that's a criminal charge, right? It's an additional charge, like resisting arrest.
Exactly.
So if we control for the cases in which there was no resisting arrest, we still find a disparity.
That's not reflected in any statistics I've seen of recent statistics.
Oh, okay. Can you find me literally any statistics that controls for resisting of arrest and shows that the sentencing is equivalent?
I mean, I'd have to do some research. That would probably take a few hours, and I don't have time for that right now.
Okay. Oh, God, yeah, this is where it becomes a problem. We've seen literally every study ever conceived on the subject. There's literally never been a single study that has ever demonstrated in any way, shape, or form, or has ever claimed at all that there is that sentencing is equivalent. Literally not one. I've never seen a single study, but we've seen God knows how many studies to the contrary. It literally doesn't exist.
I've seen many studies that say the opposite of what you've claimed, simply because the certain people involved were afraid of being accused of racism.
Wait, what do you mean?
Like, we could give this guy 10 years, but I feel like if we gave him 10 years, we'll be accused of being racist because he's black. So let's give him less. Or let's plea deal him out.
So, wait, you're telling me that there's a thing of someone quoting that? Someone saying those words?
I have seen those studies, yes.
Okay. I need literally any of those.
Like I said,
you're making this up, bro.
I'd give me hours to find these studies because they're not easy to find, especially with censorship on the internet the way it is.
So these were like studies that weren't like on like Google Scholar or any like reputable website. Like they were just kind of like Breitbart put out something, and so then now it's kind of hard to find them.
No, like for instance, the CDC published a study back in like 2016. They've removed it. Things like that. These are peer-reviewed studies, but they often get removed because they don't fit certain ideological narratives.
So you, Jackson, I don't know, man. This is. Do you understand why it'd be really difficult for me to come to this conclusion that there's a study?
This is generally why I don't like to talk on racial issues.
No,
because it's hard to discuss racial.
It's not hard. It's not hard if we're honest, because it seems to me like at this point now, we're going down this road of.
If you're being honest, you'd admit that this country is more racist against white people than black people. If you're being honest.
Okay, it seems to me like we're really going down this road now, where it's like here's data. If okay, I can show you my data that says to the contrary. It says contrary to what you're saying. I have the studies. Like, and it's not about a gotcha. It's more about the fact that at this point now, you're expecting me to just accept in blind faith that you've seen a study that is literally contrary to like the vast majority. We could like Google Scholar it right now and find 1,000 different studies to support this claim. This is not like some undiscovered topic here. We've known there's been a sentencing disparity. We've literally created the SRA in 1968 specifically to address it. We have the numbers. Like literally, there was like the First Step Act.
1968.
Yeah, but we just had, what was it, the First Step Act passed by Trump in like, what was it, like 2018, in which he was like literally trying to fight
Fantastic act.
Right, okay, sure. The fact that he felt the need to pass that act specifically deals with the fact that there's obviously a difference in sentencing, and that those are some of the issues in the criminal justice system that we're facing. So the fact that Trump felt the need to do that means that it was indicative of a problem. Right? So then the fact that that exists, we have got, again, literally every study, every piece of information on the planet, literal laws being passed, like legislation moving, like bipartisan legislation moving specifically to address this disparate sentencing, and you expect me to accept in blind faith that there is a study that you can't find because it's been censored and removed that contradicts this, that is just as valid. Do you understand how like insane that is for me to even be positive?
Yes, I agree.
But that's what you're telling me to do right now.
Yes. Like I said, you just go on faith.
Jaxel, there's I don't know what to say. I don't have faith in you. I'm sorry in that way, in that regard. I will never trust your anecdote or your supposed, like, you know, this is the equivalent to like the 10-year-old telling me that he lost his virginity to a 23-year-old woman, and not talking about Smash players. I'm talking about just in general. Like, this is the equivalent of that, right? Like, I guess you're just making this up. Like, I can't just accept. I can't just take your word for it. I can't.
Okay.
Like, so if I show you studies that show to the contrary, are you gonna, or if I show you studies that to the contrary, will you just dismiss that?
Or are they from statistics from decades ago?
I mean, if we look now, like the studies, like recent studies. If I showed you any recent studies that prove that there is a disparity in sentencing for blacks now, would you just disagree with those studies because of the study that you saw a long time ago that got removed?
No, I'd take a look at the study. Yes, definitely.
And if it disagrees with your study, then you would.
I would look further into it.
Okay. All right. So
every study will have another study that tries to refute that original study's premise.
No, not all studies. Not all studies.
Well, most studies.
I wouldn't even say like if the data is borne out and if it's pretty accurate and it's an honest study, most of the time there's not much to debunk. Like if we were to say
a lot of time, just the data isn't enough. Okay. Sometimes you have to look at external factors.
Okay, so I feel like yeah, you're basically just hand waving every study by saying, well, I don't know, there might be a study out there that like disproves it. You're also like,
and I will look for those studies.
Sure, but like that, yeah, it's just so then this is like an unwinnable. This is like this is not something. You're really immutable in your position if you're saying that no study is the end all because there's another study that might try to disprove it in the future. That's like literally an appeal to ignorance.
I try not to talk about racial issues, but the easiest example I could think of trying to explain what I'm talking about is the gender pay gap.
Sure. This is a total different conversation, and I think the gender pay gap is hogwash. Sure.
It's the same kind of way that people use the same numbers to come to different points.
No, but that's the point, right? Like, is again, in the difference in the gender pay gap is if we control for like women who have never been married, right? And we find that the pay gap disappears, right? Or is like significantly like shorter, right? Like all but disappears, just dang near equal when we control for women who have never been married. Now, so then at that point you would say, it seems like the pay gap has to do with like married women, like not being on the workforce as long and so on and so forth.
The choices people make in their lives.
Sure. Now, the problem is when we control for studies regarding sentencing disparity, we find that there's no amount of controlling that we can do to get rid of it if we use race, and we recognize, if we analyze the differences between blacks and whites, there is nothing we can control for to make it disappear. That's the problem. If we control for priors, if we control for violence, if we control for state, if we control, like there's literally nothing we can do to make it disappear. That's the difference. If we go for the control gap and we say, okay, we only look for people in the same exact field who have been on the job the same amount of time. We control for whether or not they've been married. We control for amount of time taken off. If we control for all these things, we can start making that gap disappear. There's literally nothing we can control for to make the disparity for blacks and whites disappear. So then at that point, it's safe to say, now, race is a component in this disparity. Now, are there other components? Possibly. Unconscious bias or whatever. There could be other components. But if there's nothing we can do to make this gap disappear, so therefore race is a factor. Do you understand that logically?
I understand the logic you're making, yes.
Which part of that do you disagree with?
Like I said, I haven't seen the statistics you have seen.
Okay. All right. So here, let me just, I gotta have something. Yeah, let me just open it. I gotta have, I know I definitely have something. Let me, okay. I'm sorry. You know what? I'm sorry. I think I said 1968. I meant 1986. In 1986, before the enactment of the federal mandatory minimum sentencing for crack cocaine offenses, the average federal drug sentence for African Americans was 11% higher than for whites. Right? So, that. Do you disagree with that fact? Do I need to find it on a source for you?
I mean, I'm sure that was probably true. It was 1986.
Okay.
Racism before that, yeah.
All right, great.
There used to be a lot of racism in this country.
Beautiful. The same thing goes on to say 4 years later, the average federal drug sentencing for African American was 49% higher.
Impressive.
Which is why, that was 1990 all the way till now, to which obviously Trump is trying to address that in 2016. So is it safe to say that it's probably likely that some of those same disparities were happening all the way until literally as recent as 2 years ago?
Possibly. I think the First Step Act was a good move.
I'm not disagreeing with that.
Trying to undo a lot of some historic injustices.
Oh, that's great. I totally agree with you. And some of that historic injustice was in the disparate sentencing, which existed all the way to 2018, mm-hmm. And it obviously hasn't fully eradicated it. So then in that case, would you say, just as far as sentencing is concerned, that this country still has some systemic oppression involved in that specific area of life? The fact that Trump needed to address it in 2018?
I do not like that word systemic.
Is the criminal justice system not a system?
It is, but generally I don't like the idea of systemic racism.
No, I said oppression. Oppression. Systemic oppression.
Oppression. I'm an individualist. You show me the racist, the individual. I will come to bat with you. I will help you. I will fight that person with you.
Mm-hmm.
But I will not fight an ephemeral idea.
Okay, so here's where the problem comes into play, right? It's because would you not understand? Would you agree with the fact that it's pretty safe to say that there are various systems that we all live under that affect our lives, right? Like, we have the government, which is a form of a system. We have the education system. We have the criminal justice system. We have welfare, which would be a system. We have the credit system. There are plenty of systems that we all live by, right? And if we find that some systems are literally designed and erected specifically to oppress a given body of people, then
that definitely happens all the time.
Sure.
Yeah.
So then at that point, then it would be fair to say that systemic oppression is real. So then why would you run from what systemic oppression is if you recognize that we do live in systems The systems that people are oppressing are, as you agreed, systems. So then to say that that system is oppressive would by definition be systemic oppression. So then why would you disagree with that?
Have to point out the exact system,
Sure.
the exact rules within those systems that we need to take down.
Okay, perfect. So within the criminal justice system, the idea that the lenience, the idea that you,
I'm sorry, but stop for a moment. Every time you say the criminal justice system, I hear the Law and Order doom, doom in my head.
Gum gum, bro. Son, on what's the name of that show? Freaking The Office. The Office. There's a thing where Michael Scott did that, and I just literally died. I couldn't handle it. It was too much. That show's actually getting canceled. Crazy. So so yeah, the criminal justice system, that's a system, right? And so when we recognize that there is a system, and that system is something that literally is unavoidable, right? Like if you commit crimes and you're charged with a crime, inextricably you're going to be involved in the criminal justice system. And if we find that that system has several mechanisms that are oppressive to specific race of people, then at that point we would probably need to be able to say that systemic oppression is real.
And this is my problem with what you're saying here, and I'm going to try to explain it better. The criminal justice system is sentencing black people for crimes longer than white people. That's the argument you're making.
You agreed to it already. You said 15% longer, but go ahead.
Now, my issue is the system is not the problem.
It is a
possibly
problem.
Racist judges who are giving longer sentences, the possibly racist DAs who are going for longer sentences against black people. That's the problem. I will help you fight against those individual people, but I will not support overthrowing the entire system.
Okay, so here's where we run into a problem, because it's not some of these things are not just a matter of judges. The SRA literally took out some of
what is the SRA again?
The Sentencing Reform Act. Literally, like, tried to remove some of the discretion from the judges, and obviously it still resulted in a longer thing, because what that they also created was a crack cocaine disparity. That's a systemic problem. They're charging people for crack longer than they are for cocaine, even though those drugs are identical. So I
personally think all drugs should be legal.
Okay, great. Do you also think that while they're not legal, that people should be treated equally and charged and sentenced equally?
I agree in equality.
Okay, so but that isn't happening. That's not happening. So that's a systemic problem. Like, not all problems are down to individuals. Some problems are systemic. For instance, if you have a system that says that police need to be in black neighborhoods more, it's not about an individual officer perpetuating this. It is a system, right? And so at that point, a systemic change might be necessary. If you have a system in which police officers are not punished, or police are allowed, after like committing atrocities and civil atrocities, they're able to just relocate.
I believe that the police union needs to be eradicated.
Sure, that's another great point. But if those police are then relocated to another precinct, or like the neighboring city, at that point, then that would be a systemic problem.
Police are people just like us. If they commit crimes, they should be judged on those crimes, just like us.
Okay, but then if they're not, then that means that there's
corruption, and you need to fight against that corruption.
And would that corruption be with an individual, with the police that committed the crime, or might it be systemic?
But when you say some systemic, you have to define, what are you trying to get rid of? What are you trying to stop?
We're trying to what
like you have
no I can explain it. I can explain. So the idea is not to get rid of the system, it's to reform the system, right? It's to create legislation that creates and enables accountability such that they can't hide within the system while they continue to do egregious things, right? Wouldn't that be the point? So that's the reason why we would decry systemic oppression, is the idea that maybe if we help people, if people can admit that these systems are oppressive in some way, then maybe we should reform these systems and change the way resources are allocated, change the way investigations are carried out, and change the accountability within these systems such that maybe some of these atrocities would disappear. That's now, the idea.
Wouldn't it be nice if that's what Black Lives Matter was actually accomplishing?
So let's talk about the reform that happened in Colorado, which just recently passed sweeping legislation. Okay, because this is what Black Lives Matter actually did accomplish. So the bill signed by Governor Jared Polis on Friday morning mandates the following. All local and state police officers must wear body cameras by 2023. Body camera
Good.
footage must be made public. Chokeholds are prohibited. Shooting at fleeing suspects is prohibited. Deadly force can only be used if a person's life is in imminent danger. Police must report every instance in which they stop someone who they suspect of a crime. They must also include that person's race, gender, and ethnicity. This helps for us to be able to get data to collect to recognize all of. Okay, police must report other officers for wrongdoing. This creates a legal incentive for police to intervene in cases where officers are doing wrong. Otherwise, they'll be held legally liable. Officers can be held personally liable for damages up to $25,000 if they are found guilty of violating an individual's civil rights. This creates, this kind of eliminates, qualified immunity, and allows officers to be charged. So therefore, it disincentivizes them because it's now personally coming out of them. These are all some of the things that have just recently happened. This was passed June 19th. So this was obviously in direct relation to the protests that have been happening ever since George Floyd's murder. So wouldn't it be nice if that's what was happening? Well, it happens to be what's happening. So it seems to be that that's pretty effective. We also have right now both Congress and the House, Democrats and Republicans, coming up with legislation specifically to address police reform. That's happening.
And you just hinted on a problem I have with Black Lives Matter.
What's that?
The name, the word, the phrase, Black Lives Matter.
What did I say that hinted towards that problem?
If you say you're against Black Lives Matter, it becomes the impression that you're against police reform. I'm against Black Lives Matter. I am not against police reform.
Wait, hold on.
I am pro police reform.
Okay, so I got it.
Like Black Lives Matter.
Bro, you listen. I appreciate this conversation so much because it's definitely a mental exercise, because I have to constantly be catching all these different fallacies. To say that to be against Black Lives Matter means that you're against police reforms would be to indicate that the only way that a person can believe in police reform is to believe in Black Lives Matter, which is just simply not true. There is no way that these two are not necessarily desire for police reform. Hold on. Desire for police reform is not logically necessarily causally linked to support of Black Lives Matter. So you can believe in police reform without believing in the movement Black Lives Matter. That's just that's not true in any way, shape, or form. I'm sorry. That's just not true.
I think you're wrong.
So, wait, hold on. You can't think I'm wrong if you're telling me you yourself don't believe in Black Lives Matter, but also believe in police reform. That means that you can believe that the two are not logically necessarily causally linked.
If you go to social media and type that you are against Black Lives Matter, they will accuse you of being a coon. They'll call you a racist. You're a bootlicker. You hate Black lives, etc. There is a reason why they chose that name.
So, okay, just to make sure that we're clear here, we have established the fact that those two are not inextricably tied together, right?
I don't know what
you can believe in police reform and not be tied to Black Lives Matter, right?
Yes, but the purpose is
okay. So then the problem has the problem has literally nothing to do with the name Black Lives Matter.
No, it has everything to do with it.
So if Black Lives Matter was named, I don't know, Stand With Us, the name has literally nothing to do with people's belief in police reform.
Then why are people saying, nah, bro, all lives matter?
The reason why people are saying all lives matter is because they want to weaponize a defense and gaslight people into not supporting their ideology that there is obviously systemic problems so that they can maintain the status quo, because it becomes inconvenient to be confronted with the fact that in the country that you live in and that you respect and that you love, that there could be something so I'm answering your question, that there could be something so egregious as systemic racism, and that there are people that are obviously systemically oppressed, that that confrontation is very, very uncomfortable, and it's very much, they would much rather turn their head and maintain their lives, and that's why people choose to chant all lives matter.
No, what Black Lives Matter is doing is they are racializing police brutality.
police brutality is
and
disproportionately
police
police
reform.
police brutality is disproportionately targeting blacks, why the Black Lives Matter is protesting it.
I believe there was I can't believe, I don't know
Do
if
you
it
disagree with
was
that statement?
Stanford or Harvard who did a study a few years ago, and they determined that police officers were less likely to brutalize black suspects
Find me
because they
that.
were afraid of being accused of being a racist.
Okay, good. Show me that. Show me that statistic. I mean, show me that study.
Let's see if I can find it. Who knows?
You said it was Stanford. I'll look for it as well.
It was either Stanford or Harvard or Columbia, one of those guys. It's always kind of hard to find this stuff on Google.
Oh wow, another excuse for. Oh god, I gotta do it in different in incognito tab. Hold on, here we go. This seems like this one's a pretty good one. Right.
But like I said, I generally try not to talk about race stuff. My political beliefs are more about rights.
Well, but so if I mean I don't know, it's kind of hard not to talk
Right
about.
now, unfortunately, the entire conversation is around BLM.
Well, yeah, because I mean that's literally probably the most impactful. It's been the most impactful mechanism for change. We've seen reform, we've seen systemic changes that are unprecedented, unlike anything we've ever experienced in our entire lifetime and the lifetime of my mother. I've never seen changes to this degree, and I think that they are in large part due to the protests. And I think,
And I think in large part, a lot of these changes have been bad.
And I think a large part of the protests have been galvanized by the phrase and slogan "Black Lives Matter." It has been the rallying call. What specific changes do you think that have happened? Do you think are bad?
Defunding police officers, for instance.
When you hear the phrase "defund police officers," what do you think that means?
Either it means eradicating, which is the extreme route, or simply moving funds around away from police officers to other departments. And I don't believe having less police officers on the street is a good thing. Okay. I think if we need to get rid of anything, it's the police unions.
All right, hold on. Just to make sure that we're here, I can link you this study.
I don't believe in any public sector unions in general.
Okay, so here, I'm gonna link this to you right now, so you can follow this. Open it up in an incognito tab so that you can actually read it because it's on the Washington Post.
But I hate their ad shit.
Yeah, you can use a Google incognito tab and it'll do it. So here's the thing: if you go to the second paragraph, is it the second paragraph? Nope. You go to the fourth paragraph, and it says, "There's evidence." There is evidence that undermines the entire premise of cops are harder on black people because black people commit more crimes. Study after study after study, there's 3 links there, has found that police are more likely to search black motorists after a traffic stop, even though those same studies found that white motorists are far more likely to be in possession of illicit drugs or weapons. This is true all over the country, in North Carolina, St. Louis, Vermont, Nashville, Milwaukee, San Diego, and in Boston. It's hard to come up for an explanation for that sort of disparity that doesn't include racial bias. So what happens in your brain when you hear that, when you read those sentences, and it kind of points to the idea that despite the fact that whites are more likely to have illicit drugs, blacks are policed even more with that?
I'm seeing no reference in this. Of course, I haven't looked at those 3 studies, but in the Washington Post article, I'm seeing no reference to controlling for crime rates in the areas these people were pulled over, or anything like that. What the people did once they were confronted by the police officers, what they were doing to get pulled over in the first place. Like, if you get pulled over for a broken taillight, they're probably not going to search you. But if you get pulled over doing 120 on a 75-mile-per-hour road, maybe they search.
So you believe that there?
Like I said, I don't know if the studies address that.
So,
but in the Washington Post, it doesn't say anything about that.
So again, man, they mentioned that these were literally routine traffic stops, right?
Where did they say that?
Oh, if you click any of the studies, click the first link where it says the word study, and then go there, and it tells you that.
It's another Washington Post article.
Sure, and then you scroll down, and they tell you that it was routine traffic stops. Yeah, and the book, and they have quotes from the book. Okay, let me find the quotes. Hold on. Let me see.
Also, it looks like the study is based on traffic stops from the 90s. That was 20 years ago.
Sure. No, it wasn't just it started in the 90s. They've literally collected 20 million traffic stops up to that point. And it says the focus on this book is traffic stops. What is the value of studying them? Traffic stops are far and away the most common interaction that people have with law enforcement. They therefore play a central role in forming our perception of the police and show us in turn how the police view us. Do we look like full citizens or do we appear as suspects? Frequent stops for minor traffic violation, especially if followed by a request to search the vehicle, send an unmistakable signal to those who experience them that they are viewed more as potential suspects than as full citizens.
What paragraph is this?
The second. Oh, and here it is. Even said the third one's even better. In the late 1990s, the concept of "quote unquote" driving while black began getting national attention. North Carolina became the first state to mandate the collection of traffic stop data in 1999. So it was really, really late in that year, right? Thanks in large part to efforts by black representatives in the state legislature. The database includes information on why the driver was pulled over, the outcome of the stop, and demographic information about the driver. It also has an anonymous identification number for each officer, as well as the time of the stop and the police agency that conducted it. So yeah, these are all traffic stops.
Okay, but again, that first sentence buried a lead. The concept of driving while black.
Mm-hmm.
What happens is a lot of people, and I'm sure you know this as a black man, when you get pulled over by a cop, are immediately agitated far more than people of other races. Simply because you are starting to view things from a racial lens.
No. Okay, so yeah, I don't like when people speak for me because I don't know that people are more agitated because they're being policed by officers. I think what happens is, and a lot of times, that we're a lot more afraid, that we're a lot more that we have a lot more suspicion and we have a lot more care and I would say we're a lot more concerned. I don't think that we're agitated. I don't think that we mouth off to cops more. There's no evidence or data to suggest that. In fact, from that same study, they found that that whites are more likely. We found,
and this goes back to what I said before. Police body cams have proved that not to be true.
No, they haven't. We just read. There's another study. I won't. I don't. We'll go to it later. But there's another study that suggested that police are more likely. That whites are more likely to resist arrest. We found that the studies suggest that recent studies suggest that whites are more likely to resist arrest. So that's just simply not true.
Where does it say this?
Let me find. I can find it. Let me hold on. Chicago police use more force against black people, even though white people are more likely to. That was in that same Washington Post article, the first one. Not when you click to go to the next part of the study. If you can just search the word resist.
I lost the page. It disappeared on me. God damn it.
It's in your. The link is still there. Ouch. Yeah, have you ever seen those sovereign citizen videos? No, that's a derailment. That's a derailment. No, we're not going there. Because those videos are actually those are comedy, to be honest. But yeah. So yeah, the whites are more likely to resist arrest. Like that's just factually evident.
Like I said, I'll have to look into these studies later.
Okay, so all right, so here's one study that like obviously supports the idea that whites resist arrest more. And when you look into these studies, do you think if the study was to determine, obviously because it's here, right? Like I found one for you. If you were to take that at face value, then would it give credence to the argument that police are disproportionately brutalizing black people and disproportionately policing black people, even though, and if you're taking that at face value, then that would mean that there is probably some form of racism like that's happening there, and that would be systemically oppressive, right?
Yeah, but that was never my argument for Black Lives Matter.
Oh no, that's my argument for Black Lives Matter.
Okay. Yeah, and this is generally why I try not to talk racial issues, because we're both having different arguments with each other.
No, I established very, very clearly from the very beginning of this argument that 95% of people that are using the phrase Black Lives Matter are not supporting a Marxist ideology, that the movement has outgrown the Marxist ideology that you claimed it originally had, and that the vast majority of people are decrying things like systemic oppression, such as disproportionate police brutality against blacks. I've mentioned that from the very beginning. That has been the argument. And it's not, this isn't a personal thing. If you were to Google it, hold on, let me finish. Let me finish. This is not my personal opinion. This is not something that I'm saying. This is just what I believe in. This is what I want. If we want to look, we can look at the hashtag and search that has been one of the rallying causes. Like if we look at the average protests have been specifically talking about police brutality. Like that has been the reason. So if you're combining the phrase of stop police brutality with Black Lives Matter, then obviously then it's probably reasonable to assume that the police brutality that you're talking about specifically is what is affecting black lives, which is disproportionate. So that has been the claim this entire time. Here's a study to suggest that what we're saying is true and valid. It's not completely unfounded. So then at this point, for you to sit here and try to rephrase and repurpose the movement towards some Marxist ideology when we have protest after protest and claim and hashtag and all sorts of study and all sorts of data that clearly represents what the argument is about, then that means that you're intentionally misconstruing an argument. That is a straw man.
No. Not at all. My argument has always been that the people who are supporting Black Lives Matter are supporting the organization Black Lives Matter and their Marxist ideology, even if they don't know that they're doing it. That's been my argument since minute one.
Okay, so yeah, again, so you're
generally this is why I try not to have discussions about race.
So the problem here isn't that you shouldn't have discussions about race. The problem here is that you're literally refusing to accept the data at face value that concludes that race is a big compounding factor for why specifically for disparate treatment. Like for disparate treatment in the data from
that data has nothing to do with my argument, though.
Wait. The data has everything to do with the reason why people are protesting.
That data has nothing to do with my issues with the Black Lives Matter organization.
Okay, but the thing that's motivating the people to protest in the first place is that data,
which is irrelevant to my dislike for Black Lives Matter.
So, okay, we're doing that thing again where we're going to talk around in circles. But look, if you've already concluded that 95% of the people that are protesting are not attached or associated in any way, shape, or form with the original foundation, then at that point, focusing on that organization as opposed to literally the millions of people protesting and what their cause and what their issues are is legitimately disingenuous, and it's legitimately strawmanning.
I disagree, and we're at the same exact spot where we were an hour ago.
Okay, so moving past that's I don't know why you took us back there. So
That has always been my point. You tried to move us on.
No, you
to a place that I really didn't care about.
Okay, so if I recall correctly, you specifically said we should move on because of the fact that we weren't going to agree
move
on
that. Away from Black Lives Matter.
All right, so then now we're talking about the fact that there is systemic oppression in the country, and the data suggests it. There's disparate policing, disparate police brutality, disparate sentencing. We've read that's what we've been talking about this time, and now I found studies to you to suggest it, and then you took us back to Black Lives Matter. So do you agree that there is disparate sentencing, disparate policing, and that the criminal justice system disproportionately oppresses African Americans in this country?
Historically, yes, I've said that.
Not just historically, currently, recently. Obviously, we just recently passed a law literally less than 2 years ago specifically to address that by good old Trump. So at that point, then we have to say it's not just historically, it's recently, and it's currently. Is there any data recently since that 2018 thing that has shown that it has completely eradicated the disparate treatment, the disparate brutality, and the disparate sentencing of blacks in the criminal justice system? If there's no new data to suggest otherwise, then why would we have any reason to conclude that the things that existed historically aren't still currently happening?
So what you're saying is there has been progress.
What I'm saying is that the progress has not been effective enough, and that there are still currently, yes, there has been progress. I'm not disagreeing with that. Yes, there's been progress, but there's still a long way to go, and there still is disparate treatment in the criminal justice system for blacks.
And I don't believe that these riots further that cause.
Okay, but before we get to what the effect, will you agree that that statement is true, that there is systemic oppression and disparate treatments of blacks in this country currently?
Depending on where you go, yes.
What does that mean? Explain how that qualifier matters. Help me.
What city you're in, what state you're in, where you live, yes.
What state is
some places are more racist than others.
Okay, what state is there where there isn't disparate treatments of blacks?
I don't know.
Okay, so then maybe that's not a good qualifier. What was the other one you said? What state you're in? What was the other nonsensical ones that you brought up?
Cities.
Okay, so if there's no differences in states, are there any specific cities where we found that blacks are not disproportionately treated and disparately policed?
Generally, the disproportionate treatment of blacks in the criminal justice system are in cities, and we know this.
Wait. So, all sentencing is based on state legislature. All sentencing has nothing to do with the city. Sentencing is based on state laws. Like
police organizations are generally run by cities,
okay,
or counties.
So, but what about the sentencing?
Sentencings, there are county judges.
Yes.
Not all crimes are state level.
No, but Los Angeles County doesn't have different punishable laws than Kern County.
But how they are applied may be different than other counties.
Okay, so can you find me a county or city that has any data that suggests that there is not disparate treatment of blacks? Because it sounds to me, you know what's happening right here? What happening is you're literally just moving the goalposts like a billion different places, right? So we established yes, there is disparate treatment, but I would say that there's only disparate treatment depending on where you go. And I'm like, okay, so what are you talking about? Well, different states. And I'm like, okay, what state has different? Well, maybe not states. Might not be states. It might be cities. It's like, okay, well, what city? Like the laws and stuff that are enforced are based on the state laws. It's like, well, yeah, but there's county judges. So it's like, okay, so the county judges still have to be sentencing based on the state. It's like, yeah, but I don't know. It really, they have different ways of different styles of you just keep moving the goalposts.
See how different cities and different counties apply their laws differently.
But it doesn't matter if we control for so then you're saying that you have data where there's the data is controlled for county, and that we've witnessed that there is not a disparate treatment from blacks and whites within a county?
Until you can prove to me that a county is racist, I will not accept that a county is racist.
That's not the question I asked. That's no.
That somebody or a group of people are racist. You cannot just say, they're racist.
I didn't say that all people are racist. What I did say is that there is disparate treatments among blacks at literally every level in the criminal justice system, and you have yet to show me any data that suggests otherwise.
If you could pinpoint the exact cases, I will go to bat and fight with you on it, but I will not accept ephemeral ideas.
I gotta look up the word ephemeral. I don't know what that word means. I think I understand from context, but yeah.
Basically, mystical.
Or maybe no, bad dictionary. What? Let's try what Merriam-Webster. Yeah, no, ephemeral doesn't apply here. What are you trying to say?
Basically, ideas that are on a whisper. They don't really mean anything.
Oh, yeah,
They're just something you say.
Yo, you mean ethereal?
Maybe I am messing that word up.
Yeah,
Maybe
it's
I'm
okay.
meaning
No,
ethereal.
the word's not. I don't care about the word. Like I'm trying to understand what you meant. So there's nothing ethereal about the idea. When you can't claim that the idea is ethereal when you've just admitted that the studies are, when I've linked you studies that show that there is real, like, disparate treatment among black people.
And I've said, if you want to pinpoint the exact people involved, I will go to bat and fight with you for it.
But if we're recognizing that it's happening at a systemic level, then trying to fix individual issues when the system is problematic that's ineffective.
I am at my core an individualist.
Okay, I get you can be an individualist, but you do recognize that we live and we have to function within systems. Society is built on civil systems. That's literally how things function. So ultimately, whether or not you're an individual or not, the fact is that these systems are in place, these systems have power, these systems can be oppressive, and these systems have to be addressed.
And every person in those systems should be judged as an individual. That is my point. And everything within those systems should be judged on an individual basis.
Yeah, so I feel like what's happening here is like you're choosing to rephrase or choosing to focus on individuals so as to deflect from the idea that we now have data that suggests that what you were saying originally was wrong, and that we do recognize that systemically blacks are oppressed, and now you're saying I'd rather look at them as individuals.
I've been saying from the beginning about individual cases.
Right, but here's the problem, is that these individual cases are guided by systems like the Sentencing Reform Act.
I don't know. I never read
some
that.
Some individual discretion is removed because of the systems, because of the Reform Act. Because the mandatory minimum sentencing, or like the 3 strike laws, like those are systemic changes. So you can't just say it's an individual in a system, because the judge doesn't have a choice. After someone gets when someone got 3 violent laws, 3 violent felonies. If they had 3 felonies and one of which was violent, then those people were literally punished to life in prison. That wasn't up to a judge. It wasn't based on his discretion. It was literally law at that point. It was a federal law.
And that's what I mean. You've pointed out the specific thing. Now let's take care of it.
Okay, so then at that point, then you would say that we would need systemic reform in the area of the criminal justice system as far as sentencing is concerned, correct?
On that specific law, yes.
Okay, great. So that's just one. Do you understand how absurd it is, like, that we've gone this far? Oh, you know what? Nope, I'm not going to be that parent. Okay, so it's good. I'm glad that you're willing to admit that. I think it's a beautiful thing. So now that's something that we could rally together on, right? Like the idea that within the criminal justice system, that's just one that I finally had the wherewithal to point out to you. But so then, yeah, at that point, that's a systemic change that needs to happen, right? And then like the police reform thing, as far as unions, that's another system that protects police officers, right? So that's another systemic change that needs to happen, right? Like you agreed with that. You felt like that there should be reform in the forms of like getting rid of the unions.
I think it starts with police unions.
Okay, so that's another systemic form. So then at this point, I don't think that you have a problem necessarily with overall the idea of ever having systemic change or addressing
not.
systems. It's just it needs to be made very clear to you what exactly the system is.
You need to pinpoint ideas. You can't just say the system needs to change. You need to tell me what in that system needs to change.
Okay. All right. So yeah. All right. Dang, this has been a very long road. Okay. So ultimately. So then you don't have a problem overall admitting that there is systemic oppression, and I think that this has been a very arduous conversation, to be honest. But to me, I feel like it's a beautiful thing that we can at least agree that there are systems in place that are oppressive and that probably need addressing. Now, if we wanted to start getting into like what specific systems, that's obviously another conversation that I am absolutely willing to have. But we've taken a long journey getting here, but we got here. That's the beauty of it. So there are systems that are oppressive. So then it's safe to say you believe in systemic oppression.
In some cases, yes.
Jaxel, I respect you. Thank you for for coming around. Look, the thing is, that I think that's important to note in these kind of conversations is that there's a lot that a lot of us have in common, and it's that we have such a hard time because we have so many barriers, and it takes so much to get around these things. Because I genuinely believe in the beginning, had I just mentioned systemic oppression, you probably would have disagreed. But it doesn't matter because we're here.
I think the issue is what I was talking about before about having two different conversations. When you say BLM, I hear a different thing. When I hear BLM, I hear something different than what you hear when someone says BLM.
Yeah, I try my best to kind of remove like the subjective opinion about things and kind of look more towards the data. And again, like in the vast majority of protests, police brutality was what they were talking about. So like the idea that we're talking about like some Marxist ideology doesn't seem to be borne out in like any of like the chants, most of the chants that they're calling or any of those things.
I mean, when I hear ACAB 1312, I got a problem with that.
I don't know what 1312 is.
ACAB, just in numbers. Or FTP.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So yeah, I feel like yeah, I don't know.
Or pigs in the blanket, fry them like bacon.
So yeah,
that's a fun one.
I feel like a lot of the chants and things get kind of ridiculous, and people, get very impassioned about things, and so that kind of happens. But I'll be honest with you, man. At this point, I feel like I'm kind of spent. I feel like, but listen, here's the beauty though. I genuinely okay, so now that we've like agreed that there's systemic oppression, and obviously in the sentencing that there's obviously a problem, and obviously the policing is a problem as well. So what I think we should do is we should reconvene. You have those studies, you can read those studies, and I think we should have another conversation at a later date, whenever you choose, and we can have a follow-up conversation in which we start dealing with which systems should. Because I think systemic oppression doesn't just stop in the criminal justice system. I think that there's systemic oppression in the form of in the credit system. I think there's a criminal justice system in the education. There's a systemic oppression in the education system. I think like literally everything, like almost every aspect of life, I find to be you can find evidence of systemic oppression. Now,
see, now you're talking more my wheelhouse, because generally I don't talk racial issues. I talk more individual rights, big government versus small government, left wing versus right wing kind of issues.
Sure.
That's more of the politics that I tend to talk about.
Okay, but all of these things, the things that I'm going to be talking about when I'm talking about systemic oppression in the education system, I'm going to be talking about how it disproportionately affects black people. When we talk about when we talk about systemic oppression when it comes to credit, I'm going to be talking about how the credit system disproportionately negatively impacts black people. That's going to be.
I don't think we're going to disagree on any of this stuff, honestly.
Man, that's beautiful then.
I am a small government guy. I'm very right wing. I don't think we should have things like central banking. I think things like I already said I don't like public sector unions. I would bring that completely to the education system as well. I don't think we should have teachers unions. I think teachers unions make it impossible to fire bad teachers. And then when you have rich neighborhoods with bad teachers and they can't fire their teachers, they will simply shift those teachers to the more low income neighborhoods, and the good teachers will go to the higher income neighborhoods. I definitely see all that, and I think we will completely agree on this, and it won't even be a debate.
I think you're probably right. The thing is, I think there's probably a lot more that we agree on than we disagree on. It's just that like this thing is like, we typically these kind of conversations
fundamentally my disagreement with you is the idea that America is a racist country.
Okay, well hold on now. You said earlier today that America was more racist to white people than blacks.
Yes. I do. I still, but in general, I don't think America is a racist country.
Okay, wait a minute. Do you feel like but you said America is more racist to whites than black, but America is
I
also
think they're more racist to like Asians, even more than whites.
Okay, so they're. Hold on, I'm gonna write this down because
I'm not putting.
Yeah,
I'm not putting whites at the top of the totem pole.
Sure, here, right up the. So let's follow the totem pole. Let's go down this rabbit hole. So who would you say is at the top of the totem pole? Would you say Native Americans or Asians or Hispanics or whites, or what would you say?
I think, in general, I don't think there's many. Like, I can't point to a racist law on the books.
No.
I don't really think we have racist laws.
Well, we don't need a specific law, but you just said it's more racist. So, like, who would you say it's most racist to, America?
So, for instance, recently Harvard got caught giving points and detracting points based on skin color. I think that is racist.
Okay.
They call it affirmative action. I call it racism.
Okay. All right, I hear that, but I feel like we're kind of not answering the question. Who specifically is America most racist to? Because you said okay, so you said
that is hard to say because, like I said, I like to pick specific cases. So, for instance, I would say Harvard is more racist to Asians.
All right, but you said okay, so you said America is more racist to whites than blacks. That was one, and you said
generally I'm seeing more anti-white. Like, for instance, you talk about hiring practices.
Sure. All right, wait. So she said it's more racist to whites than blacks, and you said it's more racist to Asians than whites. Now, would you say it's more racist to Mexicans?
In specific cases. In specific cases.
Okay. All right. Would you say it's more racist to Hispanics than blacks?
I don't know.
Maybe so those two might be kind of equal.
I don't know, honestly.
All right. So
I know there are certain cases where, like, for instance, if you just look at news reporting will consider whites and Hispanics different races. But then when they need to fit a narrative, suddenly whites and Hispanics are the same race.
Okay, so would you say that America is more racist to Native Americans than blacks and Hispanics, or who would you say it's more racist to out of those groups?
I don't know.
You don't know that one either.
No.
Okay, so the three,
I can talk about what I've seen.
But it's okay. I got you. So the three major groups, right? Like the three largest demographics in this country, I believe, are whites, blacks, and oh no, it's whites, Hispanics, and blacks, right?
You can be a politician and openly say you hate white people. You cannot be a politician and openly say you hate black people.
My brain. I don't know how to do it. Whoa, Jaxel, can you find me a single example of a single politician saying I hate white people?
Do you consider Jews white? Because Ilhan Omar has said many times she hates Jews.
Can you show me an example of Ilhan Omar saying I hate Jews? Find me that. I need it.
I cannot find the exact quote, but Ilhan Omar said something about the Jews have hypnotized the world. I don't remember the exact quote, and I can't find it right now.
Okay, so she has a belief about, like, maybe some of this political and geopolitical influence of Jews. Is there a difference between that and I hate Jews?
Yes.
Okay, so she didn't say that.
She didn't specifically say
Shut up,
hate,
Jeff.
but there is an implication.
I'm done reading chat. I'm sorry. I'll go read the chat. I'm an idiot. Oh my god.
What did the chat do?
My friend is just an idiot. He just likes to be stupid. He just says dumb stuff. I didn't even read it all the way. I'm sure it was something stupid. All right. So maybe it's safe to kind of walk that back a little bit and to say that there's no evidence of any politician saying I hate white people, right? So we're kind of
Not that exact phrase, no.
all right. So that's never okay. So then, yeah. So then maybe that whole statement was just wrong, right? Like to say.
But I mean, if someone said the blacks have hypnotized the world, would that be okay, or would there be riots in front of their office?
I think people would probably be disappointed in the statement, and I think the disappointment would probably lie in the fact that black people have been obviously systemically oppressed for over 400 years, and so then at this point, to be able to try to indicate that blacks have like hypnotized the world despite our like obviously disparate wealth, disparate sentencing, disparate power, like. I think to be able to make that statement would be so unfounded that probably people would decry the stupidity more so than they would decry the idea that they were somehow racist. But I will concede. I think the point that you're trying to get at is that blacks in general are a little bit more sensitive to racism than other races would, and probably because of the fact that, as you already agreed, there are plenty of systems in place that are disproportionately oppressive towards black people. So then they probably would be a little bit more sensitive towards it, right?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely spoke about that before.
Yeah, so, I mean, in all fairness, yeah, you're probably right. We are a little bit more sensitive. But then, of course, that would be justifiably so, given the thing that you just admitted to. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's probably realistic, sure. But, again, I don't view that as some sort of advantage.
What is this treasure chest on your chat room?
I have no idea. Oh, is that the points where you like get points?
Yeah, I just got 5 points for clicking it.
Yeah, that's like people like they can ask questions and stuff. I should do a little bit better job of like maintaining that, but I don't. Yeah, like I don't know. Like
but,
we don't
yeah, like my whole thing. I'm very much about individual rights, obviously.
Yeah.
And
but the statement you made when you said that America is more racist towards whites than blacks, and I need to figure out in what way. What way? Like, tell me the way that America is more racist towards whites than blacks. If you've already admitted this,
in the social
sentencing
culture.
Oh,
in the social culture.
Okay. So you feel like socially.
Did I lose you?
Well, yeah, you lost me a long time ago because no, because like if we're talking about, so if you're saying socially, well, oh my god, are you talking about like on Twitter? Because if you're talking about like socially, America's more racist towards whites than blacks, even though I disagree with that. I just
news.
Okay, but I disagree with that statement altogether.
Television.
But sure, if that's oh god, bro, you couldn't be more wrong. This is crazy. But if that's the argument, I gotta close the chat. I'm sorry, because my brain is going too much. If that's the argument that you're making, but we've like had the conversation about like actual like systemic oppression that like literally like impacts like people's development, right? Then at that point, like I think to compare like social pressures to like literal systems designed to strip people of their livelihood, dignity, and humanity, wouldn't that be a little bit ridiculous? Isn't that kind of absurd?
Okay, here's an example. I forgot what.
I feel like you didn't hear what I said. I feel like you were going to say what you're saying right now.
Saying.
Regardless of what I said, come in. Hold on 1 second.
There was a state.
I was going to give it to you yesterday. The money that she owes, something like that.
Who?
Come on.
10, 160. 50, 160? Didn't she owe me more than that? Okay, thanks, and I appreciate it. I'll look and see how much it is. How much the rest of it is. Thank you.
Oregon.
Okay.
Oregon passed an edict a couple weeks ago, or at least tried to before they got roasted for it. About face masks.
What was the
Everyone has to wear a face mask.
Okay.
Except black people.
Okay. And so it didn't actually happen?
They got roasted for 2 weeks straight, and they said, all right, I guess we're not doing this.
Okay, so then that sounds like maybe somebody came up with some weird idea that didn't really gain enough traction that the vast majority of society agreed against, and so then they end up getting roasted to the point that they end up like completely walking that entire idea back. So society in general wasn't up for whatever those few people that suggested it were. So then in general the country and the state were pretty much against that. So that doesn't sound like that's evidence of America being more racist towards black people, right?
Well, that actually more less racist.
I mean, but that doesn't talk to the point that America is more racist towards white people, because a couple of people decided that they thought it might be a good idea to enact something that specifically was shut down and shouted down by the entire country, right? Then that sounds like no. That
I
wouldn't be a
can
country
accept
issue.
that argument.
Okay, good. Let's try another one. What's another example?
I don't have any other examples readily available.
All right, so then it's probably safe to say that if we have all of these systemic levels where we can say America is disproportionately negatively impacting the development of black people, right? We have not just historically, right? Not just in the way that the housing markets were, or FHA loans were conducted, or education with separate but equal, or like the civil rights with the inability to vote, or like obviously with the criminal justice system, or when it came to property ownership, or when it came to like literally every aspect, right? When it came to like healthcare access, like when it came to job applications and every other form of living, we have all of this historic examples of America being racist towards black people. So then I think the idea that you would be able to say that America is more racist towards white people, you would need to show me some levels where that kind of discrimination was happening towards white people, but you don't have any on hand or any that you can think of whatsoever.
Not in 2020.
All right, so then it's probably safe to say that America is not more racist towards white people if we can find out that in 2020 there's still disparate sentencing that is negatively impacting black people, right? Or that blacks have literally one-tenth of the wealth of whites, or that, I don't know, blacks' educations are significantly lower, like the quality of education for blacks is significantly lower than whites because education is inextricably tied to freaking
I mean, I didn't want to go here, but I can
taxes.
easily say that we've been seeing rioting for the past few months and people not being arrested for it.
No, that's absolutely not true. There were like recent developments where they were like chasing down a bunch of people for rioting, and I think even within the riots, by the way, we'll find that those things were disproportionate. I mean, those things were absolutely racist. And the fact that the vast majority of riots were peaceful, yet you're still highlighting the non-peaceful...
Right, you mean protests.
I'm sorry, the vast majority of protests were peaceful, and you're highlighting the riots, and specifically the peaceful protests were being enacted upon violently by police officers, which is a violation of their constitutional rights. We witnessed that throughout the whole movement, from literally the day that he was murdered.
If you're sitting in your car and a man walks up to you and he's got an AR-15 strapped to his chest, his hand on the handle, other hand on the barrel.
I feel like you just pivoted. You're pivoting really hard.
No, because he walks up
that's
to
a pivot.
your car and says, "You owe me money for reparations." You think he should be arrested? That's extortion.
Okay, so let me ask you a question really quick. I feel like this whole time I didn't know you were a dancer, because it seems to me like your ability to pivot is like on the next level, right? Because we're talking about the protests and whether or not the protesters were being arrested, and you specifically now just jump to a whole other topic.
I'm talking about cases where people are not being arrested for committing crimes.
Okay, no, we were talking about the protesters and the rioters not being arrested for crimes. That's what you mentioned, and that's what I addressed. Are you going to deal with that, or do you want to just pivot to this next thing?
And I'm talking about a specific case of people not being arrested.
Okay, so
while committing crimes during these protests.
So I feel like you just want to move on now that I've like addressed the thing that you said, and you just want to just like drop that one.
I'm giving you examples that refute the statement you're making.
No, the statement you made was specifically about whether the rioters during the George Floyd protests were arrested. That was the statement you made. And I addressed it by talking about the fact that peaceful protesters were enacted upon violently by police officers. That's what
Generally, they were not. It was we went an entire month
where
no one was getting arrested or even attacked by police officers.
There's literally not a month that has happened since George Floyd's killing in which there weren't people being tear gassed and sprayed. And hit with rubber bullets. There's not been a 1 month that has passed by in which that hasn't occurred. Literally not one.
You have many cities throughout the country where cops have been told to stand down.
Okay, and there are many cities throughout the countries where they were okay. So just so we're clear here, okay. George Floyd died on May 25th. Okay, the protests have only been going on from then until now. It hasn't even been 7 weeks. So then you can't say there's been months where there hasn't been any violence, because there's been
an entire month.
Okay, so which month? The month of June? Because I'll show you all sorts of violence there. Was it May, during the month of May? Because the very first day, the very first protest was the one that got tear gassed and sprayed with rubber bullets before they burned the police station down. Like that. So which month? Was it the month of May or the month of June?
For instance, we've got 3 weeks of the Chaz in Seattle. You have Minneapolis.
Okay, so
pretty much burnt to the ground.
You're saying in the month of June, no one was arrested? Is that what you're saying?
People were not being arrested in Chaz.
Oh, okay. No, so in the month of June, you said it was months, right? So in the month of June, are you claiming that no one was arrested?
I am talking about specific cities.
Okay, so now we're no longer talking about months. This is that goalpost movement again. There you go again. So you first mentioned that you said there were months. Now you recognize that there's only been 1 month, and now you're saying it's not about the month. You're saying specific locations weren't arrested.
Yes.
Okay.
Places where,
all right.
where the police were being told to stand down.
Okay. So you do recognize. So now that you've moved this goalpost, so I can go ahead and make the statement and make sure that we're correct here before we move past that. So yes, there have been plenty of arrests during the protests, during the riots, like large amounts of arrests. And what was even gross about it is because people were saying it was a violation of their constitutional rights because everyone has a right to a speedy trial, but because of the volume, a judge stayed their release, saying that they can't just release them off. They do have actually to be tried, and literally, which is a violation of their civil rights because these people didn't get the speedy trial that you're entitled to within our Constitution, and some of these people are still being held awaiting trial to date. So no, it's not true that people weren't being arrested. There was literally a lot of outcry over the fact that some of these people arrested are literally still sitting in jail, some of whom are literally peacefully protesting. So the fact that you're trying to claim that people were rioting and not being arrested is just simply not true.
The Chaz was a major act of sedition that lasted 3 weeks.
Okay.
They took control of a Capitol Hill zone, and they were not arrested for doing so.
Okay. Have they been arrested?
The mayor, Jenny Durkin, allowed it to happen.
Have they been arrested now? Yes. Oh, okay. So then, yeah, we're not talking about
3 people.
Oh, okay. So some people were arrested for Chaz. Okay. So that's not a situation where it's gone completely where they've been completely exempt from prosecution,
and it took
right?
them 3 weeks.
Okay. So all right. So it wasn't even a whole month, but yeah. So it took them 3 weeks,
and
even
control of an entire city for 3 weeks.
And even it wasn't a whole city; it was just a little section.
Well, it was 6 city blocks.
Yeah. And even while they weren't going directly into that city block, as they were trying to figure out how to logistically do so without just slaughtering all of the people in there, which would have probably caused an insane amount of outcry, they were still arresting people around Chaz. They were still arresting people within the city. They just didn't take over that little blockade or whatever. So yeah, I think the statement that you were making that people weren't being arrested and that even within miles of Chaz, people were getting arrested and charged, and that's been happening for the entire time. So there's literally not been a month that there wasn't violence enacted on people for peacefully protesting. There has not been a month where people who were rioting and things weren't being charged. They've done investigations. There was a woman who set a car on fire, and the FBI did an investigation through tracing. I actually made a post about it on my Facebook page about they literally traced down her shirt and to be able to find out where she bought the shirt, to end up finding the person who was responsible. She was a white woman, but yeah, they ended up finding her and arrested her. So yeah, no, the fact that you're making up these claims that people just weren't arrested or people weren't charged, that people were just allowed to protest and riot, is just simply not true. There were literal rubber bullets happening to people. They were dispersing them, tear gassing people, and all sorts of violent atrocities were happening. So yeah, that's just simply not true. So okay, again, so we're sure that that's not an example of where America was extremely lenient to blacks. We've also found out in places like Utah where the protests were overwhelmingly white. So no, this whole talking point is just completely, I am hand waving it all because it's literally nonsense. It's literally contrary to literally any information. A simple Google search will show you that. We have God knows how many video examples and protesters, of reporters being shot by bullets for literally just being there and trying to record the protests that were peaceful. So no, that's just simply not true. So do you have any other examples in which America is more racist towards white people?
You want to talk about 1,000 people committing crimes and only 3 of them getting arrested and trying to hand wave that away? Sure, whatever, fine, hand it away. Let's move on.
Okay, so can you give me an example of America being more racist towards white people?
Why bother? You're not arguing in good faith at this point.
Chaz wasn't even specifically black. Matter of fact, the vast majority of people in Chaz were white. How is that bad faith? How does that even speak to your argument? What? Do you think maybe that's why they didn't get arrested?
Why? Because they're white?
I mean, I don't know if that, like, what's gonna like. Your argument has been like, yo, they're letting black people get away with stuff, and that they're more racist towards white people. And then here we are, we have a situation, Chaz, which was like literally predominantly white, like, and then they weren't arresting them, and you were trying to use that as an argument for why they were letting blacks get away with bloody murder. But it turns out they were actually white people. So,
I mean, that's not true, but sure.
wait, which part isn't true? That Chaz was
The fact
majority
that
white?
it was the white people.
No, Chaz was majority white.
So, for instance, let's look at Raz Simone. He's passing out guns from his. First of all, I think passing out guns should be legal, but in Seattle, it's not. He's passing out guns. He's holding people at gunpoint.
So,
and they didn't arrest him.
Okay, so are you willing to admit that Chaz was majority white?
I do not know the demographics of Chaz, but I see people committing crimes irrelevant of the color, and they weren't getting arrested.
Okay, so then that doesn't speak to the argument, because your argument was that that America was more racist towards white. But if Chaz was majority white, then talking about the fact that people in Chaz weren't getting arrested really speaks against your argument. So do you have another argument that you would like to go to that like kind of better demonstrates the idea that whites are that whites are treated worse than blacks?
I mean, it's not hard to argue that the reason Chaz was let go was because it was a Black Lives Matter movement.
Okay, so now it's no longer about the ethnicity. Now you're saying it's just people involved with Black Lives Matter are less likely to be punished, right? So this is no longer about a white thing?
Because I already said it's about that name.
Yeah.
I said this before.
Funding, God dang it, we need to talk. But anyways, what happened to funding David's account yesterday? And opening Joel's.
Joel did open his, and I told you that David couldn't open. I mean, David didn't know how to fund it, and David had to do his homework. David was doing his homework, and I was like, okay, well then we'll have to do it afterwards, and we just didn't get a chance to do it. But he was busy.
No.
Yeah, I had to leave at 9. And he didn't wake up until 4.
Do you really need? Okay, really quick. So
hey, I'm in the middle of a debate. I am actually streaming. When I'm done, I will come out and we'll have a talk.
I will be at the gym, but make sure we need to talk.
Yeah, we will.
All right. So
I mean, I've already said before, it's a reason specifically why they picked that name. Because you go against anyone who's protesting for Black Lives Matter, you hate black people.
Okay, so the idea is now it's no longer
It
about.
doesn't matter what color skin the person is.
Okay, so
you
then
go against them. They're protesting for BLM. You hate black people.
So if the color is irrelevant, then this doesn't further your argument, because the argument that you made, the comment that you made that you were supposed to be defending was that America is more racist towards whites. And here you don't have you have yet to prove an example. Can you provide an example of America being more racist towards whites than blacks? That's.
I just did, letting all these BLM riots go.
But they didn't let them go. They literally were.
The majority of them have been let go.
No, that's.
Majority of people involved have not been arrested.
So no. The majority of protests have been peaceful, and even those have been acted upon violently by police officers, and we have large scales of arrests being made in cities where there were violent protests. So that's just simply not true.
There was such. I can show you many examples of videos of violent protests where nobody's arrested.
There was such a voluminous a group of people that were arrested that they literally were in violation of their civil rights to a speedy trial because they overwhelmed the court system. So it's just not true. I did far. It's just not true. So you can't make that statement. It's just not true. So do you have any other examples? And okay, so okay, listen, these riots.
I mean, just because they exhausted the existing court system doesn't mean there isn't more.
Wait. So then the fact is that it wasn't a matter of them just letting them go. It's they literally didn't even have enough resources. So then that's not an example that would further the belief that they were just letting them go, and therefore Black Lives Matter just gets this like immunity to like prosecution, right?
When you tell police officers to stand down, then you turn those resources off.
Did you tell? What? Can you show me an example of which they told police officers to stand down to a riot and not just a protest?
I already told you, Chaz.
Okay.
That's the easiest example.
All right. Yeah, so this is just a bad example. Okay, let's just move forward past that. So you're saying the only example that you have at this point now is specifically Chaz, which just happened literally less than a month ago. So prior to this month, you didn't believe that America was more racist towards whites than blacks?
Okay, here you have, let's see, Minneapolis police officers. I just Googled police officers told to stand down. Minneapolis, Baltimore, Columbus, Louisville.
Right. So it sounds to me like you're making the statement that you only believe America is more racist to whites because of the recent protests. Prior to the recent protests, you didn't believe that?
Yes.
Okay,
I believe that the country has given way too much leeway to these rioters.
All right, so then let me make sure that I'm just, it's not about a gotcha, but I just want to make sure that, because I feel like you're going to move this goalpost really heavily. So your argument is the only reason that you believe that America is more racist towards whites than blacks is because of these protests basically being immune to like prosecution, right? Like that's the only reason you believe it?
It's not the only reason.
Oh, good, because I thought this was a bad reason. So can you give me one of the good reasons? Because obviously I think this one sucks. Do you have any other reasons? Or can you just tell me any of the other reasons? What's another reason?
For instance, I think, what's it called? Affirmative action. I think that's racist.
And you think that's racist specifically towards white?
Yes.
But I thought Asians were the ones that were the most disproportionately affected by affirmative action.
Well, it can be racist towards Asians as well.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know. I can't. Sure. So, do you want to have a conversation? I don't know, Thursday about affirmative action. I'll be willing to have that conversation, and I'll do all the research I need to be able to like adequately show you why affirmative action is not racist. Would you like to have that conversation on Thursday?
Not really.
So in reality, you would rather maintain this belief, because so far in this conversation, I feel like you've kind of recognized that you've walked back a lot of your positions because they were really untenable, and I think the same would be the case for your affirmative action belief. Do you feel like I've do you feel like I've disrespected you during this conversation?
No, I just don't believe you've changed any of my opinions. I just believe we'd had different arguments.
Okay, and so you're basically saying that you're immutable in your position, that so there's no point in conversing about it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, pretty much. I don't believe that any conversation we had changed any of my opinions.
No, I'm saying regarding the affirmative action. Because originally, by the way, you said there wasn't really systemic oppression, and you changed your mind on that one.
I said there was no systemic oppression against black people.
Yeah, but then you changed your mind on that.
I guess I sort of did.
Yeah. See, it was effective. Right?
But like I said, generally my opinions, I try to stay away from race. My opinions are more about left-right politics and individualism versus collectivism.
Sure, like that's a choice of conversation, but then to do so doesn't give you the right to completely ignore the egregious examples of systemic oppression that are disproportionately affecting black people. That in and of itself that's incredible. Hold on, let me finish. That's really, really selfish, right? And the reason why it's really selfish is it's the equivalent of someone's house being burned down or someone's house being on fire, and you're saying, yeah, I don't know, I kind of tend more to focus on what's the word? I can't even think of the word right now. On landscaping and making sure that people's property looks really, really good. And it's like, I just want to make sure that everyone's okay. And it's like, wait a minute, no. This is something that's really like it's dangerous and it needs attention. And you're choosing instead to just focus on something that's a little bit more ethereal, like I don't know, right versus left, as opposed to the thing that we have data that's like legit as crystal clear as possible that systemic oppression is real, such that you've agreed to it. So you're saying you'd rather ignore the thing that you agreed to is real to focus on politics. I mean, to focus on just the Republican versus Democrat Party. That's what you think is more
this is
effective?
a different argument we're having. You're having an argument about systemic oppression. I'm having an argument about active crime and riots. The moment I start seeing violence in these riots, people destroying statues, burning down buildings, I don't care about any sort of argument you have about systemic oppression.
Okay. All right, man. So I'll let you have the final word. I'm ready
Fine.
to. I'm ready to go.
But
I'm
the
ready.
moment you start burning other people's houses down because, hey, you guys aren't paying attention to my house burning down, so I gotta burn this white guy's house down so that the firemen will finally come to take care of both our houses, I got a problem with that.
All right. So yeah, man. I think yeah, I'm over the conversation at this point. Do you have
we're
any
having
kind of last
different
words?
conversations.
For sure. And it's not because I'm not able to address what you're saying. You literally move the goalpost at every conversation. That's literally what happens every time. It'll be like, here's a topic, and I'll say, okay, here's my response to that topic, and you say, I'm talking about this, and I'll say, okay, here's my response to that. I'm talking about this, and it's just, you literally keep doing that. Is that fair to say?
No.
Okay, well, I guess we can agree to disagree. Anything else? You got any final words?
Nope.
All right, man. It's nice talking to you.
Oh, yeah. Here's my final words. Rioting is illegal and rioters should be shot.
Okay.
That's my final words.
All right, man. It was nice talking to you, bro.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Oh, man. It's really frustrating. So what happens is, oh, man, I've never experienced it in an actual conversation, to be honest. I feel like very often people really want just like the simple, like quick grab, like gotcha moment in a conversation, like the really like simple, easy to consume nugget. Like they want to say things like rioting is bad, or racism is evil, or everyone deserves a right to life. Like they want to say that, but when you start actually dealing with the nuance of like these conversations, most of the time they don't really have any like actual realistic stance. And as we kind of witnessed, like it just kept moving the goalposts, and it's like every point really wasn't whatever. And it's a kind of frustrating thing. But you know what? My goal ultimately in these conversations is to try to find some common ground at the end of the day. And I think we found common ground in him admitting at least that systemic oppression is real. Now, do I believe that that's going to be a lasting, effective change, like over his mentality? Probably not. I don't think his thoughts are contiguous or... I just don't think his thoughts are contiguous in that way. I think he's more of just a person that like just looks at a whole bunch of like individual disparate points, and then it's just like, yeah, this is my ideology. And you're like, well, what is it? And it's just like, this and this and that and this. And it's like, how are those related? No, these are just all part of like the sphere of ideology that I have, right? And I think that's kind of what's happening. So then like trying to get a person to understand like the relational value between all of those disparate things and arrive at an actual cohesive point, it's almost impossible. So all you can do is kind of chip away one day at a time. So it's like, okay, at least we got to systemic racism is real. The problem is, even gaining that ground, I couldn't then later on and say, well, since you believe systemic racism or systemic oppression is real, let's focus on this thing now that's related to that. Because then he would like completely abandon the idea that systemic oppression is real and just start moving on to the new topic. Like there's like there is no connection. But either way, it is what it is. Probably, I think I will, Andy. I am so angry. Jeff posted that. They deleted that too, bro. I almost died. It's too much. I don't like that, dude. Don't come in. Don't be in my chat when I'm having these conversations, trying to have a real discussion, bro. Anybody? What you guys want to? Anybody disagree? Oh, I just gotta play it now. I just gotta play that. That's wild, nigga. Hey, you guys want to see a picture of Chaz? You guys want to see a picture of Chaz? Here, look, I'm going to show you what I had up on my stream. This is what Chaz looks like. Hello? Nothing much, chilling. What you up to? I am. Hold on, let me just say goodbye to a few folks real quick, okay? All right, 1 second. All right, listen, you guys, it was great. Thank you guys for chilling. I am doing a lot better. If you cannot see, a difference in the way that I'm carrying myself in these conversations from now as to the way that I would have been a year or two ago, you're just legitimately as blind as. No, I'm not going to take no shots. But if you can't see a difference, I don't know what else to do. It's like, it's just wild. Because before, I would have lost it, and I would have lost it. I wouldn't have been able to handle the gulp. I would have lost it. But I have a goal. And I just genuinely, my interest is, I believe that it's our responsibility to change the world in this way. And even if I don't change directly his mind, then when the video goes, it's like some people will watch it, and then some people will at least be a little bit more like, okay, maybe I didn't see it that way, but now they'll see my points, right? That's it. That's my goal. That's the purpose of these conversations. I'm sick to death of the echo chamber nonsense that's happening, that's being enforced by these algorithms that are causing people to become more divided, and no one's actually engaging in conversation and actually hearing the opposition. You don't even know what the opposing side thinks because you're never even willing to have a conversation. It's cowardly, it's divisive, and it's disgusting. And that's something that I won't stand for, and that's probably my chief motivation for these conversations, because I hate the echo chamber. Anyway, I love you guys. Thank you guys for being present for this conversation. I uploaded on YouTube for anybody who missed the beginning where he kept trying to refer to the Marxism nonsense, which is just a whole nother thing. We'll be in touch, okay? I gotta have this conversation with my buddy, but I'll be in touch later, all right? I wanted to get in Discord and have a come. Hold on. Hey, Eric, can I call you back in like 30? All right, man. I'll do that. Okay, peace. So that's what I was going to say. Anybody, because it sucks because I don't get a chance to read a lot of the chat. I'm kind of remiss to do this a little bit, or reluctance rather. It's because I feel like it's just going to be an echo chamber of, hey, that guy's not smart. And that just doesn't do anything for me. But sure, I'm going to join the Discord. We're going to have some conversations. Anybody that has anything that they want to add to the conversation, maybe eventually I'll start adding these parts into whatever, depending on how this one goes. But yeah. I'm gonna be in Discord. No, come to mine because Jeff's in there. I'm about to talk to him real quick. Anybody else? Yeah, come have this conversation. We're gonna discuss the thing off stream. All right.